The PlayStation 5 is coming out very, very soon, and we've done a Leaks and Rumors episode on a PS5 in December 2018 last year, covering everything we knew about a PS5 up until that point. But since December, oh boy, we got so many updates on it, and here's everything new. So grab some snacks, grab some popcorn, some drinks, whatever you want to grab, and get ready because this is going to be one very exciting video. Speaking of exciting stuff, we're still doing the AirPods 2 giveaway. That's still in the works. I mean, it ends on April the 23rd. So if you want to enter that, if you haven't already, just be a subscriber of the channel and follow on Instagram at ZenofTech and leave a comment on this post saying why would you want to win a pair. Okay, so something very unusual is happening with Sony this year. So Sony has announced that they would not be attending the world's biggest gaming event, E3, this year in 2019 at all. And this is extremely odd. It's odd because Sony has been attending E3 for literally the past 24 years, and they've yet to miss a single one. But 2019 for some reason would be an exception. The first one, actually. Now, I believe that there are two possibilities as to why Sony has decided to skip the 2019 E3. They either have literally nothing to announce, or they have something so big to announce, so massive, that they want to hold their own separate PlayStation event just for that. But Sony did say the following statement about E3. As the industry evolves, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to look for inventive opportunities to engage the community. So from this statement, it looks like Sony is planning to hold a separate event this year in order to engage with a community. And I mean, there are a few big games coming in 2019. We have Last of Us 2, Days Gone launching soon, Ghost of Tsushima, but those have been already announced at the previous E3s. And most big studios such as Ubisoft, for example, are even skipping 2019 in terms of game releases altogether. So the next Assassin's Creed, which is launching in 2020, the next God of War, as well as the next Horizon Zero Dawn, are all set to be currently in development with a PS5 in mind. And we do have multiple reports that some game developers already have the PS5 development kits in-house. Now, in case you don't know what the console development kits are, they're basically prototype boxes with some of the main specs in there. The design is far from finished, by the way, so yeah, those boxes are massive, and not even the specs are fully finished, by the way. However, the development kits boxes would be at least as powerful as the final versions would be. Now, in terms of the actual specs, a custom-made AMD Ryzen 2 seems to have already been decided. This would be an 8-core, 16-thread processor, so quite a big leap from the PS4 Jaguar architecture chip. And so the GPU will have a custom Navy architecture with more than 8 teraflops of compute power. In terms of the RAM, will have 12 gigabytes, GDR6, usable by both the CPU and the GPU. And these are the specs that have been reported by quite a lot of sources. Pretty much all of them have pointed to these exact specs. Now, just to give you guys an idea, the PS4 has 1.8 teraflops of GPU compute power versus 4.2 on the PS4 Pro. So having 8 is just crazy. This means that a PS5 would be at least twice as powerful as the PS4 Pro is. The Xbox One X, for example, has 6 teraflops, and it can run a good number of games in actually 4K, native 4K at 60 frames per second, mostly racing games, whereas the PS4 Pro has to use checkerboard rendering, so it's not native 4K, and it's also 30 frames per second in almost every big game. So a few exceptions obviously apply to both systems. But with 6 teraflops, the Xbox One X can already handle 4K 60 games, true 4K, and with 8 teraflops of compute power, the PS5 would indeed be the true 4K gaming machine. Not just being able to handle all the games in native 4K, but I'm pretty confident that Sony also wants 60 frames per second as a standard. Jason Schreier, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, probably not, from Kotaku, did say 2 very interesting things about the PS5. So the first one being that both Sony and Microsoft are actively working on outperforming Google Stadia in terms of raw performance. So in case you don't know, Google Stadia is basically a streaming platform that Google has announced. Now, Google did say that Stadia would run at 10.7 teraflops, which is incredible. So that's 2 teraflops more than what we initially heard rumored about a PS5. However, it seems like Sony is now aiming to go beyond 10.7 teraflops just because of Stadia. And this is awesome. So competition always drives technological progress. So hearing that the PS5 will be more powerful just because Google got into the gaming industry is amazing. Really, really happy to hear that. And the second thing that Jason said is that both Microsoft and Sony would be launching not 1, but 2 consoles in 2020. Now, we already know that Microsoft is working on 3 Xbox models, actually, full video on that here. But in terms of Sony, this is the first time we've heard about 2 models of the PS5. Now, unfortunately, we don't know anything else about a second model of the PS5 or anything for that matter. This is the only report on that. But in my opinion, it would be either a higher end version of the PS5, a PS5 Pro, so to say, that could support 8K gaming, like we've seen rumored before, or it could be a lower end version of the PS5, most likely a portable one. We know that Sony wants to bring back the PlayStation Portable in order to better compete with Nintendo Switch. The original PSP was actually very successful, but after Sony launched the PS Vita, one of the worst names that they could have chosen in my opinion, it didn't do so well. And Sony has recently stopped manufacturing the PS Vita entirely, so it's pretty much dead at this point, even though it's still being supported through software and even some new games every now and then. But a portable PS5 would be amazing, and I'm definitely confident that Sony could pull something like this off. But then at the same time, Sony does have remote play for Windows, Mac, even iOS, which was, by the way, launched recently. So if you have an iPad, you can connect it to a controller and stream your PS4 games to your iPad, which is pretty cool. And it works pretty good as well. Yes, it won't be nowhere near as good as playing it on the PS4 directly, but you know, it's a good attempt. And I have a feeling that Sony plans on focusing more and more on remote play. And considering that the leaked price by an alleged insider for the PS5 was $399, which is actually the same as the launch price for the PS4 Pro. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sony ends up releasing a much more expensive model of the PS5 that could do even higher resolutions. So yes, in that case, that second model might actually be that PS5 Pro. Now, the PS5 Portable won't be cancelled, but I believe that this is what Kotaku's report was referring to, a PS5 and a PS5 Pro at launch. Now, aside from the performance gains, one of the biggest new features of the PS5 would actually be backwards compatibility. And Sony Japan has actually filed for a new patent recently regarding backwards compatibility, and this is quite interesting. So we already know that the PS5 will definitely be fully compatible with PS4 games, and Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida, again, probably butchered that name, not only confirmed that the PS5 is actually being developed, but he told Financial Times that the next generation hardware would not represent a major departure from the PS4 in terms of the system architecture. But this patent shows that the PS5 might be able to fully emulate PS3, PS2, as well as PS1 games natively, which is pretty awesome. This not only means that you would be able to play all of your favorite classic games, but if the developers choose to do so, they could just release a patch for those games to take advantage of the extra power of the PS5 and let those games run in true 4K 60. I'm just hoping that Sony finds a way to retroactively check if you already own those games so that you don't have to, you know, purchase all of those again. And also, the PS5 controller got leaked as well. So Twitter user Yakuza Ninja 4K posted an image of what appears to be a very different PS4 controller. Whether or not this is legit, we don't really know. Now, here at Zone of Tech, we do make renders. Like the PS5 render that you've seen a few minutes ago, this was based on a previous leak, which turned out to be fake, by the way. But long story short, we've been doing renders since early 2016, and we can easily tell which one's real and which one's fake. And to be honest, I don't think that this one's fake. It's either an amazingly well done render or it's actually genuine. And I honestly do believe that this one is indeed genuine just because it's not trying to look like a concept. Instead, it looks realistic. So usually concepts are made to look amazing and unrealistic, you know, just to drive more attention and more clicks to them. Our concepts are mostly based on realistic leaks, almost every single one of them. And this image does look very realistic to me. In case you're wondering why this looks so fat and so thick, well, it's because it's not a finalized unit. So Sony had the same thing with the PS4 development kit controllers, where they looked very fat and ugly, but they did have the main features of it built in, such as the touchpad and the light bar. And from the looks of it, the main addition to this controller would be a touchscreen rather than just a touch panel that we had before. And this is actually very useful, having a second screen to maybe display your inventory, stuff like that. The Nintendo Wii U actually had this built in, but it failed because of how large the controller was and many other things. But it seems to be a much smaller display, which you can use for typing messages in the chat with friends, from the looks of it at least. And the options and the share buttons have now been moved so that there are horizontal now rather than vertical, which I think is a great idea. This makes it so much easier, makes them so much easier to find and feel. And then the D-pad has also been redesigned with more tactile feedback, and the buttons themselves, they look quite a bit sharper and again easier to feel. And overall, I think that this is a very realistic looking PS5 controller, as the PS4 one was already very, very good, and there's not much improvement that Sony can make to it rather than, small changes like this. Now, the shape of it is quite a bit weird, how the bottom part of it is actually lower than the top bit by quite a big margin. Also, there seems to be 2 speakers right next to the touchscreen as well. And overall, this controller looks pretty good. Obviously, it's not finished yet, but it looks better than, in my opinion, the PS4 controller looked when it was in that development kit process. My main concern, though, is when it comes to the battery life. Having a touchscreen means that it would discharge significantly faster unless Sony decides to have it disabled if you choose to do so in some games, or if they decide to put in a much bigger battery than in the PS4 controller, which will also make the controller heavier and, bigger. Okay, what else? Well, aside from the DualShock 5, another big thing for the PS5 would be the PSVR 2, the second generation PSVR. And by the way, I actually got a PSVR recently, around December or so, 2018, and I absolutely love it. So I'm using it on a PS4 Pro, and the graphics are actually really, really good. Way better than on Samsung's mobile Gear VR, which I had before, but still not as great as an Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, for example, on a PC. So the main issue today with the PSVR is when it comes to the resolution. It's quite low, so it's 1080p for both eyes. And then the tracking isn't great either. So yeah, if the PlayStation camera cannot see the light from the VR anymore, or even the controller or the Move joysticks, it would lose the tracking completely. So we would need something based on a laser system like the HTC Vive is, rather than actual visual cameras. Luckily, it seems like the tracking issues would be heavily improved with the second generation PSVR. So Sony applied for a patent involving a wireless PSVR headset that also has a camera so that it can itself track the environment rather than just the console itself tracking the headset. So yeah, pretty much like a phone handles AR today, this is how the PSVR 2 would handle motion tracking from the looks of the patent, at least. And in terms of the PSVR 2 specs, from the patent, it would feature a 60 gigahertz wireless frequency, which according to the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE, you can get speeds of up to 7 gigabits per second or 875 megabytes per second wirelessly, which is insane. This is crazy. Hopefully it's also safe for, your brain. But the resolution of the display is also said to be bumped to 2560 by 1440 from 1920 by 1080, but it seems to be for both the eyes rather than for each eye. And the field of view, however, this thing is said to be increased to 220 degrees from about 100 degrees on the PSVR 1. This is a massive change. For example, even the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive right now, they have 110 degrees, so this is massive. And in terms of the release date, pretty much everything points towards a 2020 release. Now, Michael Patcher, a well-known market analyst, points to a 2020 release as well for the PS5. He also claims that Sony would try to milk the PS4 sales for as long as possible, which I totally believe. Personally, I do expect Sony to tease the PS5 at an event this year and to release it around March or April 2020, so in about a year's time. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to the PS5, the DualShock 5, the PSVR 2, and all the cool games that the PS5 will launch with. This will basically be, this is the next generation of consoles. And then we also have Google Stadia, which is a completely different console. Check out this video if you want to learn more about Google's own streaming console. Yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about a PS5. And also, don't forget about the AirPods 2 giveaway. Just be a subscriber to the channel, follow on Instagram @ZenofTech, and leave a comment on this post saying why would you want to win a pair of the AirPods 2. And I'll be announcing the winners on April the 23rd on the main Instagram page @ZenofTech. If you have enjoyed this video, give a like and subscribe to notifications for more cool in-depth tech videos like this one and more Leaks and Rumors episodes. Thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. ZenofTech, signing out. Cheers.